On this episode of the Warrior Wood Shop, we're going to get straight to the point with the joiner. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Warrior Wood Shop on our series of how to process a board. This is the second of our three. We're going to talk about how to safely use and operate a joiner. This time we're going to bring in Mr. Mertens to help out with this one, but I've also got my two guests, the science geeks, science nerds, what do you guys want to be called?
I think that's appropriate.
Mr. Gentleman and Mr. Freeman. So I'm going to turn it over to you for this video.
So my first question, you guys, is do you know what a joiner is for?
That's why they're there. That's why we're here.
Actually, to straighten an edge. We can actually flatten the face with it as well. So it actually has two purposes. For our purposes here in the shop, we usually just limit it, especially for the beginning classes, we limit it to just straightening an edge. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at primarily today. You have a couple different parts of the joiner here. You've got a fence here that the board has to run against. Beneath this red thing, you've got the blade, which is going to be spinning at a fairly rapid rate. You've got an in-feed table and an out-feed table. And just based on that, which direction do you think we're going to be moving the board?
Right towards the blade?
Absolutely, absolutely. We also, this is a 8-inch joiner that we have here, so we actually move the fence back and forth so that we don't wear down the blade in any one area. We also tell the kids not to mess with any of the settings on here. We preset the depth that it's going to take off, how much wood it's going to take off. We also preset the fence for them. Every couple of days we'll move it back and forth so that it's not wearing down in one particular spot. You guys ready to get on it?
Yeah, I want to see this work. How far would you usually take off in a single pass on this machine?
Basically, the maximum that we allow the kids to take off at any one time would be 1/16 of an inch. Typically, we have it set for 1/32. It's a little bit easier on the blades. It's easier on the motor as well.
Okay. Will this take like 2 or 3 passes?
It all depends on what the edge looks like. And what I'm going to be talking about in just a second, I'll show you, is we're going to have a board that may have a little bit of an arch to it. So depending on how much of an arch it has, you might be able to get it done in 2 or 3 passes. I've had boards where it takes up to 15 or 20 passes. All right, so what I got here is a board here, and when you look at this board, you've got a really rough edge over here. When you look at it from this angle, you see that as well. Now, typically, if I have a board like this I did to one of my students, they're going to, and I'll ask them, which edge do we want to do? Which one do you think they're automatically going to pick?
That one looks like it's going to be easier to smooth out, but the whole board looks like it should be just a piece of trash.
It does look like that, doesn't it? And typically, that's what they'll say. Well, I'm going to choose the easiest side. Well, that's not always the case. You actually have to take this board and kind of look at it, and when I sight it down this edge here, what I'm looking for is, does it look like an arch? Okay? Or how straight is it? Because if it has a little bit of an arch to it, and it's going that way, if I put it on here, it becomes like a rocking chair. And what's going to happen is as we run it through that blade, and you put pressure near the blade, it's going to roll. So you're going to keep that same shape to it, and you're never going to get straight. Okay? So what we got to do is we got to look at that. And when I look at this, and another way to check it is actually put that edge onto the bed itself, and you just push on it back and forth. And if it doesn't rock, you got at least 2 points in contact with the table, you're in pretty good shape there.
Just like any machine, stance and hand placement are two of the big key things to prevent kickback and get accuracy in your cuts. So, when you want to be my guinea pig?
Sure.
Okay, check your sleeves. You're a basketball coach too, right?
Yes.
Okay. What's on defense? What are the kids not supposed to do when they're playing defense?
Shouldn't be straight up and down.
Straight up and down, there's one. What about their feet?
About shoulder width apart or so.
And then when they're moving?
Don't tangle your feet up.
With this machine, we're going to be at about a 45, and we're going to have to shift. So we tell them, just like basketball, shuffle, don't cross, because you could see that trying to shuffle could be, so that's where you're going to stand. You're going to start off behind the guard, shuffle down as the board rolls across or slides across, depending on the length of the board. A shorter board, you may not even have to shuffle your feet. Quick quiz. What's the shortest board we want on this machine? Same thing that's inside your shoe.
A foot.
A foot!
Same as the planer.
That's standard through most of our big machines. You might find at a home model, the manufacturer might say 8 or 9 inches, but we just go with a 12-inch rule and it's pretty good across all of the machines. Next, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Mertens because he seems to be our resident expert on where hand placements shouldn't be, let's put it that way.
So he actually brought up a good point. I'm going to piggyback on this for him real quick. Is he talked about the length of the board, what that should be. As far as the thickness or the width of the board, what's the narrowest or widest that you can do?
Whatever you can hold on to.
If it's taller than the fence, that's true. What if it's shorter than the fence? Can you use a push stick with it? You can, and that's actually what we do teach the kids. So that is something that you want to do.
Now, my wife was cutting up some zucchini and on a mandolin slicer, and she wasn't using the push stick. And we found out that the emergency room can't do too much when you chop off the end of your finger.
No, they really can't.
Okay.
No, I kind of can relate and feel for her a little bit there because I've taken off the tip of my thumb actually as well. And I was actually doing the other thing that you can do with this. We're going to actually do edge joining or straightening the edge. I was doing face planing on it. And to make a long story short, I did exactly what we teach the kids not to do. I was distracted. I was thinking of something else when I was using the machine, which I should not have been. And as a result, what I ended up doing is as the board was coming up, I tried to pick it up. Well, thinking my hand was back here, I actually picked it up here, and my thumb went right into the blades.
Could have been a lot worse, I suppose.
I could have taken more off.
How long do you think your hand was in contact with the blade?
Oh, it's probably less than 1/10 of a second. And I lost about 3/16 of an inch of my thumb. You could actually see the tip of the bone. It went down that far.
So if you've been paying attention to our series on all the tools, we both have had accidents. But hearing the stories, both times we were distracted. You have a family event going on. My son was 6 days old trying to wrap up a kitchen cabinet project. So students, if you are distracted in any way whatsoever, girlfriend breakup, bad night at work, you got called in for a double shift, your parents yelled at you, whatever, your medication changed, let us know because we don't want you to make a bad day even worse by ending up in the emergency room.
Again, like we said before, this is in feet table, out feet table. We're going to be moving this way. So what we're going to do here is, remember the stance he just talked about. You're going to take this board, keep it up against the fence. Now the problem is when you have something like this on the bottom, it's not real flat, so you notice it wants to move back and forth. So what we like to do is we actually take our hand and we put it in contact with the table. Now you might think, okay, that's kind of dangerous. We're kind of close to the blade there. This hand is not going to move. So what I'm going to do with this hand is I'm going to put it here and I'm going to spread my fingers basically over the face of the fence. So as I push this through, I'm going to let it slide underneath my fingers. I'm just going to keep moving it down. And then when I get to a point where I'm running out of board here, I'm going to bring this hand around the cutter head, back to here, holding it against the fence, and then finish that cut.
And this red piece always stays up against the board right where the blade is?
Yes, it does. Okay. That's a idiot guard or a safety guard, however you want to look at it. Basically, it's telling you to keep your hands out of this area.
Can we call that the Mertens guard?
That would be appropriate.
We tell the kids the guards on the tools are as good as caution tape around a hole. Because as you can see, as the board comes through, it's going to expand. The guard doesn't know the difference between your hand and the board. So all that red zone is caution tape.
All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to straighten this edge. I'm going to go ahead and do the first pass so you can kind of watch what's going on, observe. I've talked about it, and then once I get this done, you see it, and one of you can actually try it. You ready for this?
Yeah. Can it kick back
Technically, yes, it can. There's not a whole lot of kickback with this, and that's one of the reasons, besides keeping the blade sharp, keeping the motor not having to work so hard, is if you don't take off very much, your chance of kickback goes down. There you go.
And then, so there's no adjustments in between on this one. We just power it up, move it back over, and run it again and again.
Yeah, until you're finished.
Setup wise for the students, because we set the depth, it's literally walk up, check the side of the board, turn it on.
Okay.
But you can see on any project, it's going to be 4 to 6 passes on every board. So again, you're going to spend 10 or 15 minutes here at the machine of your 90 minutes in class.
Now, one thing that I want to point out, two things actually. One is the reason I try and get as close to the blade as possible with my hand pushing against the fence. The farther away you are, the more likely that board's going to come away from the fence. And you really want to keep it tight because typically you want a 90-degree angle right here. Okay? The other thing is that you have to think about, and we talked about it with the planer, is which way should the actual board go, one way or the other. He talked about the pitting of that. Same thing can happen here. You basically want to go with the grain. And if you look at the actual grain itself, you see that it's running uphill a little bit away from you, kind of like an arrow almost. That's the direction you want to go. If I run it this way, I'm actually going against the grain, and it's going to probably chip it out then.
Again, if it happens, flip it around, run it again. Some boards like pine, when it's got the swirls going all over the place, there's no escaping it. You've got half the board's going to be right and half the board's going to be wrong. That's just luck of the draw.
If the board has a cup to it, is there one way that should be up against the fence or not? Or does that matter?
Depending on how bad the cup is, I'm probably going to go through the planer before I actually join it then.
Or we'll talk about face joining. That's where you lay it flat and move the fence backwards.
What about the other side?
This side here?
Yeah.
You probably think that probably need to flip it over and do it on the other side then, right?
Yes.
No, we don't want to do that.
Why not?
Well, here's the problem. You're going to make two edges that are going to be nice and straight. Well, you notice on this one, look how it runs downhill. Eventually, you're probably going to end up with a board that continues like this. You're going to have a straight edge, but it's going to start to actually recede back down to the other side. So there is another way that we can actually make this edge parallel with this edge.
How do you do that?
That's going to be on another tool. That's called the table saw.
It's also going to be covered in our 6 steps to processing the board. All right, you think you're ready? What do you think a big indicator is that you're going to need to use this push stick?
I would say if the board doesn't get up above the guard here.
That's
Or it's
the fence.
close to it.
Most fences are 3 to 4 inches tall, and our shortest, closest we want your hand on any tool is 3 inches. So yeah, that's what we say. If it's above the fence, you can use your hand. In fact, we encourage it. Why do you think we encourage your hand over the push stick?
More control.
You definitely have a sense of feel and more control. But there's just a point where we don't want to look like murders. All right, procedure's the same. The only thing, you're going to use your right hand as long as you can. And when they come together, that's when you'll switch over. Because out here, it's a little harder. But in the middle, a little bit easier to keep it up against it.
So I start off with my hand until it gets in here and then grab the push stick?
Perfect. Your left hand does the same exact thing if it was 3 inches tall or 12 inches tall. So you want to demonstrate that one for us? Make sure.
So we're gonna have to move the fence back for this a little bit.
Now, this is something you and Rodaway just do.
Yeah, we don't, the advanced kids can do it if necessary, but basically the beginning students, absolutely not. Of the two procedures, this is probably the most dangerous.
We order our lumber rough, but hit and miss plane. So the mill kind of has a flat enough edge on it. I encourage the students to do this when you're talking doors. If something can be glued or attached to something else, there's a little bit of flex in wood. But a cabinet door, if it's got a little bit of twist, you want to take that out before you head to the planer. So this is, again, like you said, advanced kids, at-home machines.
So just sticking with this board, even though it is fairly flat. So basically what face planing is, or face jointing is taking that board flat on here like this. Maybe it has a little bit of cup in it, maybe it has a little bit of twist in it, okay? Something that the planer can't take out, or maybe it's too small to be put through the planer. The problem is, you can't be running your hands on here like this. Look how close I would be to that blade there, okay? Typically what you use, I call these the paddles of life, okay? You put it on here, it's got a little rubber on there, it grips the wood, and you can actually push it across here like that. Typically I use 2 of them.
See, that's where him and I differ. I will use 1 paddle and 1 push stick. You see, this is my opinion, but sort of professional. Sort of professional. You see a problem with running 2 paddles. What could it potentially be?
There's no side-to-side control.
You don't have very much forward.
Yeah, so I have actually taken, it's disappeared, but I took one of these and actually screwed a block of wood. I do like the paddle, but you want to have something but the manufacturer says that 2 paddles is okay. It actually came with 2 of those. We encourage the students though to use a push stick and a paddle.
On a board like this, I'd like to have a shorter one,
Yeah.
but it is, you know, it's what we have. But basically, this is what you're going to do here. A lot louder. Do you understand why?
Taking off a lot more.
Well, you have 3 blades on here that are 8 inches long. So anytime the wood is being cut, you've got, however, this much wood being cut at any one time. Unlike the planer, you have it here and here and here and here. So you just have that constant noise. He talked about the noise level of the planer. Think of that magnified by
2.5?
yeah, 2.5 times.
Okay.
This is also where kickback can definitely happen. I actually was fighting it a little bit. I was pushing pretty hard. Okay? When you're taking off that much wood at any one time, it's gonna want to send it flying. And I have seen kids, and I don't recommend anybody trying it, just coming back this way, because as soon as you do this, going this direction, zing, it's gone.
Why, if you review back, if you're the guy waiting in line, don't watch your buddy standing right here.
Look around, make sure nobody's there, and away you go.
All right, this wraps up the second part of our three-part series on processing your own lumber. This one we covered the joiner, stance, hand placement. The other two cover the planer and how to operate with it. And then the final one will be putting everything together, the 6 steps of processing a board. So thanks for watching. We'll again thank our guests for helping us out. Now go out and make some sawdust.